"We need to build alliances," Kane said to his senior officers, pacing in front of the war table. "The Tika are coming, and we can't face them alone. We'll need every ally we can find." The officers nodded in agreement, their faces grim. The Tika were legendary for their brutal tactics, and if they were going to face them head-on, they needed to form a united front. "We've got to reach out to the others," one of the officers suggested. "The Galactic Council, maybe even the Krogan. They've had their own run-ins with the Tika. If we can bring them into this fight." "No," Kane interrupted, his voice sharp. "We don't know who we can trust. Some of those races will turn on us when they see how powerful the war gods really are. We need to be careful who we approach." The decision was made. They would not wait for help. They would strike first. As the war gods continued to prepare, a strange calm settled over Earth. The citizens, once fearful and uncertain, now held a quiet confidence. The war gods had proven that humanity could hold its own against the galaxy's fiercest predators. Sarah Turner sat in her office, watching the data streaming across the screen. Her mind was racing with ideas. The war gods were humanity's greatest weapon, but she knew there was still much more to learn. They needed more than just brute force. They needed innovation, something that could give them the edge in the coming wars. "We've only scratched the surface," Sarah muttered to herself. "The war gods may be the weapon, but humanity's ingenuity will be what saves us." In the cold, unyielding expanse of space, the Tika fleet was moving toward Earth. Their ships, sleek and menacing, filled the space around them, a dark army of war machines. The Tika's mercenaries were already preparing for the onslaught, and their weapons systems hummed in anticipation. "Ready for battle," Vokhtar hissed, his yellow eyes glowing with malice. "Prepare the fleet. It's time to teach these humans their place." The war gods were ready, their ships poised above Earth, waiting for the inevitable battle to come. Commander Kane stood at the helm of his flagship, watching as the Tika fleet neared. "This is it," Kane said softly, his gaze steady and unflinching. "We've made our stand. We won't back down." The tension was palpable as the two fleets faced each other across the vastness of space. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Kane's voice echoed across the war god's ships, his words carrying a weight of defiance. "For Earth, for humanity, we fight." The war gods had proven themselves, but the battle for Earth was far from over. With the Tika fleet in full swing, a new wave of galactic tensions began to rise. The victory over the Zafar had been significant, but it was only a spark in a much larger fire. Now, humanity was facing an even greater challenge. The rest of the galaxy was beginning to notice the strength that had been awakened on Earth. The war gods were not just a weapon. They were a symbol of humanity's survival, and that symbol was drawing attention from all corners of space. Commander Elias Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The Tika fleet was closing in, but Kane's mind was not solely on the enemy. His thoughts were racing with the knowledge that this battle would not be the only one. Other factions, other species, had seen what the war gods could do, and they were not going to stand idly by. In the quiet of space, Kane knew that Earth had made its mark, but that mark was now a target. "They're coming for us, aren't they?" asked his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sienna Holt, as she stepped up beside him. Kane nodded, his gaze unwavering. "The Tika are just the beginning. The galaxy doesn't take kindly to threats, and humanity's presence has become one. We need to prepare for more." Holt didn't reply immediately. Instead, she turned her attention to the battle map on the screen. The Tika ships were now in range, their weapons primed and ready. The inevitable was coming, and there was no turning back. "What's our strategy?" Holt asked, her voice calm but filled with urgency. Kane's jaw tightened. "We'll fight them head-on, but we can't afford to let them corner us. We've got to keep moving, keep hitting them where it hurts. We can't let them dictate the battle." Meanwhile, On the Tekka flagship, Vokhtar's mood was one of quiet satisfaction. The humans had fought bravely against the Zafar, but their resistance would be nothing compared to what the Tekka would bring. They had been preparing for this for centuries. Now they would finally put an end to the threat of humanity. Prepared to engage the war gods, Vokhtar ordered coldly, his voice echoing through the command center. We shall show them the true power of the galaxy. The grand hall of the Galactic Council shone with the brilliance of 1,000 alien species. It was a place where the rulers of the galaxy gathered, where laws were made, and where power was displayed. In the center of the chamber, standing alone, was a human representative, Ambassador Daniel Ross. He could feel the stares of the aliens around him, their expressions full of amusement and arrogance. A tall reptilian creature with emerald scales and golden robes stepped forward. High Chancellor Vorik of the Threxian Empire smirked as he addressed the council. So this human wishes to speak. Have we not wasted enough time already? His voice echoed across the chamber, followed by the laughter of dozens of alien delegates. Daniel stood firm, his hands behind his back, his face calm. He had expected this reaction. Humans were the newcomers, the ones who had just recently stepped into the stars. The powerful empires of the galaxy saw Earth as nothing more than an insignificant planet, a weak civilization that had no place among them. An avian species known as the Xilari clicked its beak in amusement. Perhaps the humans think they have something to offer. Do they bring new technology? Advanced weapons? No. Then why are they here? Laughter filled the chamber again. The arrogance was suffocating, but Daniel did not react. Instead, he studied them. They believed themselves superior, untouchable. He could hear the whispers among them. Pathetic humans. They should have stayed on their little planet. What could they possibly know? A delegate from the Calzoran Dominion, a species with skin like molten rock, leaned forward. Tell us, human, what wisdom does your primitive species bring to the mighty Galactic Council? Daniel let the silence stretch for a moment before he spoke. His voice was clear, steady. You all believe we are weak. You believe we are ignorant, that we know nothing of the great secrets of the universe. He took a step forward. But what if I told you that there is something we know, something even your most powerful civilizations have forgotten? A few aliens scoffed, but others became curious. The confidence in his voice unsettled them. Vorik sneered. What foolishness is this? You claim to know something that we do not. Absurd. Daniel simply smiled. Then allow me to prove it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It was ancient, older than any human civilization. He pressed a button, and a holographic projection appeared. Symbols, long lost to time, filled the air. The reaction was immediate. The laughter died. The amusement vanished. Silence fell over the chamber. The Xilari delegates' feathers puffed in shock. The Calzorant's fiery eyes widened. Even Vorik, so full of pride, took an uneasy step back. This language, a deep voice rumbled from the back of the chamber. An elder being, a member of one of the oldest species in the galaxy, stared at the projection in disbelief. This is impossible. Daniel's smile never faded. You recognize it, don't you? He turned slowly, letting his gaze fall on each delegate. The language of the ancients, the first civilization, the ones who ruled this galaxy before any of you. Murmurs spread through the chamber, whispers of shock and disbelief. Some of the delegates looked at one another, as if trying to confirm what they were seeing. Vorik growled. How could humans possess this knowledge? Daniel locked eyes with him. Because your kind forgot. But we remembered. The weight of his words settled over the room like a storm. The aliens who had mocked him now watched in stunned silence. And for the first time, the Galactic Council understood. Humanity was not as weak as they believed. And this was just the beginning. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber stretched longer than anyone expected. Moments ago, the aliens had been laughing at the human representative, Daniel Ross. Now they were frozen in shock, their eyes locked on the ancient symbols floating in the air. A Xilari delegate, feathers ruffled, leaned forward. Where did you get this? Daniel kept his expression neutral. He knew he had just changed everything. These aliens, powerful and proud, were now afraid. They recognized the script, the language of the ancients, the first and greatest civilization that had ever existed. A civilization long believed to be extinct. Vorik of the Threxian Empire slammed a clawed fist onto the table. Impossible. The language of the ancients has been lost for millions of years. No species, not even the eldest among us, has been able to decipher it. His golden eyes narrowed. How do humans know this? Daniel took a step forward. Because we never forgot. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Some delegates leaned in to whisper to their advisors. Others stared at Daniel in disbelief. The weight of the moment was crushing. The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for millennia, believing themselves to be the pinnacle of civilization. Yet here stood a human, a member of a species they saw as weak and primitive, holding knowledge they had all lost. A deep voice rumbled from the shadows. An elder being, its body made of shifting stone, spoke slowly. You must explain everything. Daniel nodded. Hundreds of years ago, before we even left our planet, we found ruins deep beneath our oceans, structures that should not have existed, artifacts that defied explanation. At first, we thought they belonged to an ancient human civilization. But as we studied them, we realized they were far, far older. The chamber listened in stunned silence. These ruins contained texts, inscriptions in a language unknown to us. It took centuries, but we deciphered them. Piece by piece, word by word, we uncovered the lost knowledge of a civilization older than any of you. A civilization that once ruled the galaxy, and then vanished. A reptilian delegate from the Shakan Syndicate hissed. Lies. If this was true, we would have known. Daniel's eyes darkened. Would you? Or did your ancestors choose to forget? The words sent a chill through the room. An avian diplomat from the Volneri Dominion spoke next, voice unsteady. And what? What did these texts say? Daniel's grip tightened on the device in his hand. They spoke of a warning, a secret buried so deep that no one was meant to find it. He glanced around the room. Something the ancients feared. The chamber went silent again. The aliens who once laughed at humanity now leaned forward in their seats, their expressions tense. Vorik's voice was barely above a whisper. What secret? Daniel exhaled slowly. That is something we are still trying to understand. But one thing is certain. He let his gaze sweep across the chamber. This knowledge was never meant to be forgotten. For the first time, the rulers of the galaxy were no longer looking down on humans. They were afraid. And they had every reason to be. The chamber of the Galactic Council no longer echoed with laughter. The aliens who had mocked humanity minutes ago now sat frozen, eyes fixed on the human representative, Daniel Ross. The floating ancient symbols still shimmered in the air, the lost language of the ancients, a civilization older than any species in the room. Vorik, the Threxian chancellor, narrowed his reptilian eyes. You claim the ancients left behind a warning. But a warning about what? Daniel studied the chamber. He could feel the tension, the unease creeping into the minds of those who once dismissed Earth as weak. He let the silence stretch before speaking. A war, he said finally. A war so devastating that it erased an entire civilization from history. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates looked at one another with suspicion, while others whispered to their aides. A Xilari diplomat ruffled its feathers. Ridiculous. There are no records of such a war. If an empire as powerful as the ancients was destroyed, we would have known. Daniel's gaze was sharp. Would you? Or did those who came after them choose to erase the truth? A deep voice rumbled from the shadows. One of the oldest beings in the council, an elder of the Lumari race, spoke slowly. If the ancients fell to war, Then who was their enemy? Daniel took a steady breath. That's the part we haven't fully uncovered. The texts speak of a great enemy, something unlike anything the ancients had ever faced before. He paused, then added, something that should not exist. The silence that followed was suffocating. A cold mechanical voice cut through the air, one of the AI representatives of the Synthar Collective. Describe the enemy. Daniel tightened his grip on the ancient device. The records do not give it a name, but they describe it as something unstoppable, a force that did not conquer, did not negotiate. It consumed. Entire planets vanished. Stars were snuffed out. It was as if the galaxy itself was being erased. A Kalzoran delegate, her molten skin flickering with heat, growled, "That is impossible. Nothing in the universe could wield that kind of power." Daniel's voice remained steady. Then explain why an empire that ruled the stars for millions of years simply disappeared. That question sent a wave of unease through the chamber. The Lumari elder exhaled slowly, his stone-like face unreadable. If this is true, then why was this knowledge hidden? Why did we not inherit their warnings? Daniel's expression darkened. Because someone wanted it buried. Another silence. But this time, it was different. Now, the leaders of the galaxy were not just listening. They were afraid. Then, from the far end of the chamber, a thin, raspy voice spoke. "Shut this meeting down." All eyes turned toward a pale, elongated alien seated in the shadows. Grand Minister Othran of the Zavani Dominion, the head of one of the most secretive species in the galaxy. His white eyes were locked on Daniel with something between hatred and terror. "This knowledge is forbidden," Othran said, his voice sharp. "You do not understand the danger of what you speak." Daniel met his gaze, unflinching. "Then you understand, don't you?" Othran's body stiffened, but he did not answer. The realization hit the room like a storm. Some of them knew. Some of them had always known. And now, humanity had uncovered a secret they were never meant to find. Something ancient. Something terrifying. Something that might still be out there. And the galaxy was not ready for it. The chamber of the Galactic Council felt colder now. The laughter was long gone, replaced by the quiet fear that clung to every delegate in the room. Daniel Ross could feel the shift. These rulers of the stars, these arrogant species who had mocked humanity, were now afraid. But not just of the knowledge he had revealed. They were afraid because some of them already knew the truth. Grand Minister Othran of the Zavani Dominion sat in his shadowed corner, his pale, elongated fingers curled into tight fists. He had been the first to demand the meeting be shut down, the first to react with terror instead of disbelief. And that told Daniel everything he needed to know. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "You told us humans were weak, that we were unimportant. So why is it that we discovered the truth while all of you ignored it?" A Xilari delegate ruffled his blue-green feathers. "You are mistaken, human. We did not ignore it. We were never told." "Then why?" Daniel shot back. His sharp gaze turned to Othran. "What are you so desperate to keep buried?" The chamber waited. Othran did not answer. It was Vork of the Threxian Empire who broke the silence. His reptilian claws tapped against the stone table, golden eyes fixed on Othran. "He knows something," Vork hissed. "And I want to know what." Othran did not move, but then, without looking at anyone, he spoke. His voice was low, but it carried through the room. "There are things in this galaxy, things far older than any of us." His pale eyes met Daniel's. "You think you have uncovered the truth, but you have only scratched the surface." Daniel didn't blink. "Then tell us the rest." Othran exhaled, slow and heavy. For the first time, the powerful leader of the Zavani Dominion looked tired. The ancients were not destroyed by war. He paused. They tried to fight, but in the end, they only delayed the inevitable. The room was deathly silent. Othran continued. "The force that erased them, it does not conquer. It does not negotiate. It does not stop. He looked around the chamber, as if checking to see if something, was watching. Then he whispered, "It simply waits." Daniel frowned. Waits for what? Othran hesitated. Then, with clear reluctance, he said, "For someone to find it." A chill ran through the room. Vorik growled, "You mean to say this force still exists?" Othran's expression darkened. It never left. A cold, metallic voice spoke, one of the AI representatives of the Synthar Collective. "If it still exists, why has it not returned?" Othran's fingers curled tighter. "Because we buried it. The survivors of the ancient war, the few who remained, they did what no empire had ever done before. They erased their own history. They destroyed their own records, their own technology. They made sure no one could ever follow the path that led to their extinction." Daniel felt his pulse quicken. "And now we've uncovered that path." Othran's white eyes met his. "Yes." A heavy silence filled the chamber. No one spoke. No one even breathed. The implications were too terrifying. Then suddenly, the lights flickered. A strange hum filled the air, low and unnatural. Some of the delegates turned, their eyes widening as their data screens flashed with distorted symbols that had not been seen in millions of years. Daniel's blood turned ice cold. The same symbols from the ruins. Othran's face drained of all color. He rose suddenly. "You've done it. You've woken it up." A second later, the alarms began to scream. And across the galaxy, something ancient, something patient, began to stir. The alarms blared through the Galactic Council chamber, their shrill wails echoing across the vast halls. Holograms flickered erratically, screens glitched with symbols no living species should have ever seen. The ancient language, the dead language of the ancients, was now appearing on every interface, every system. Daniel Ross could feel it. This wasn't just a glitch. Something had changed. Othran, the once powerful Grand Minister of the Zavani Dominion, looked truly afraid now. His pale fingers trembled as he whispered, "It's awake." Vorik of the Threxian Empire slammed his clawed fist on the table. "What is happening? Speak clearly, Zavani." Othran turned sharply to him. "You fools. You should have left it buried. We spent ages making sure no one would ever speak that language again, ensuring no one would ever reactivate the ruins." Daniel felt a cold realization crawl up his spine. "You're saying just reading the text, just deciphering it, woke something up?" Othran nodded grimly. "It was never just a language. It was a key." The lights in the chamber dimmed. A low vibration thrummed through the floor, deep and unnatural, as if something vast had just shifted far beneath them. One of the Synthar Eye representatives suddenly went rigid, its artificial eyes flickering. Unidentified transmission detected. Tracing origin. The AI froze. Then, in a distorted voice, it said, "Origin. Unknown." The words sent a fresh wave of unease through the room. Vorik bared his sharp teeth. "Impossible. Every signal in the galaxy has a traceable point of origin." Othran exhaled shakily. "Not this one." Daniel clenched his fists. "Then where is it coming from?" Othran slowly turned toward him. Everywhere. The chamber was silent. No one spoke. No one could. Then, without warning, the massive central display, built to project images across the entire room, flared to life. The ancient symbols expanded, twisting, forming something new. And then a voice spoke. It was unlike anything they had ever heard. A voice that wasn't organic, yet not entirely artificial. It was deep, layered, as if countless voices spoke at once. "You have called." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The other delegates recoiled. Some shouted in terror, others simply stared, frozen in place. The voice continued. "You have spoken the words. You have remembered." The lights flickered wildly, and for a brief second, Daniel felt something. An awareness, vast and alien, stretching beyond anything he could comprehend. It was looking at them. "We are coming." The moment the last word was spoken, the entire chamber was thrown into chaos. Data screens exploded in bursts of static. Some delegates collapsed, clutching their heads as if something was screaming inside their minds. The Synthar IA units sparked violently, their processors overloaded. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The chamber was dead silent. The screens were black. The alarms had cut off. But the damage was done. Daniel slowly turned to Othran. "What was that?" Othran's voice was barely above a whisper. "The reason the ancients erased themselves." Vorik, still shaken, growled. "You mean to say they knew this would happen?" Othran nodded. "And they were willing to sacrifice their entire empire to keep it asleep." Daniel swallowed hard. "And now, we've woken it up." No one had an answer. But far beyond the council chamber, in the depths of space, something was moving. Something old. Something powerful. Something that had been waiting. And now, it was coming. A heavy silence settled over the galactic council chamber. The screens remained dark, the alarms eerily quiet. Yet, everyone in the room felt it. The suffocating presence of something watching. Daniel Ross stood still, his mind racing. He had spent years uncovering the secrets of the ancients, chasing the truth that had been lost to time. But now, that truth had awakened, and it was looking straight at them. Othran, still pale, turned to the Synthar I representative. "Status report. What's happening out there?" The Synthar, still recovering from the system overload, twitched as its remaining functional sensors processed the data. Its mechanical voice was strained. "Galactic-wide disturbance detected. Multiple star systems are reporting anomalous activity." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Define anomalous." The Synthar's flickering eyes met his. "Massive power fluctuations, communications failing. Unknown gravitational distortions recorded on the outer edges of the galaxy." The Threxian warlord, Vorik, let out a low growl. "Gravitational distortions. That means something big is moving." A nervous whisper spread across the council chamber. The delegates, the rulers of entire empires, suddenly looked small, helpless. Daniel clenched his fists. "Can we locate the source?" The Synthar's processors whirred, attempting to track incoming anomaly. The AI froze. Then, in a voice that was barely above a whisper, it said, "It is already here." A deep vibration rolled through the chamber, not from any speaker or alarm, but from the very structure of the station itself. It felt like a heartbeat, ancient, slow, and impossibly vast. Then, the main display screen flickered back to life. A single image appeared. A black void stretching across the depths of space. Daniel stared at it, confusion turning to dread. What are we looking at?" The Synthar's mechanical voice wavered. "A new entity has entered known space. It is unlike anything recorded in galactic history." The image zoomed in. The void wasn't just empty space, it was moving. A mass, darker than the vacuum of the cosmos itself, spreading like an unnatural storm. It was vast beyond measure, its edges shifting like a living shadow. Stars disappeared into it, their light swallowed whole. Othran took a step back. His voice cracked. "It's not just coming." His pale fingers trembled. "It's already here." Then, across every remaining working speaker, the voice returned. "You have called." The chamber's lights dimmed. The gravity within the room wavered for a second, as if reality itself had been touched by something unseen. The voice grew louder. "You have remembered." Daniel felt something deep within his mind. An unnatural pressure, a weight that wasn't physical. He fought the instinct to run, to escape. But there was nowhere to go. "Now you will see." The image on the screen changed. Instead of the void, it now displayed the homeworlds of the great galactic empires. The lush cities of the Zavani Dominion, the towering spires of the Threxian war machine, the endless data networks of the Synthar Collective. One by one, those images flickered. Then they vanished. The screen went black again. And then, the final words echoed through the chamber. "We are here." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates screamed orders. Emergency protocols were activated. Ships were mobilized. But Daniel knew, deep in his gut, that it wouldn't be enough. This wasn't a war. This wasn't an invasion. This was something older, something that had been waiting for them to find it. And now, the galaxy would face what the ancients had buried. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Warlords barked orders into their communicators. Sci-Fi units attempted to regain control of their systems. Panic spread like wildfire as the realization settled in. The thing in the void wasn't coming. It was already here. Daniel Ross stood frozen, his mind racing. He had spent years seeking the truth, and now that truth had answered him. The ancients had erased themselves to stop this from happening. And now, the galaxy was about to understand why. The massive central display flickered back to life. This time, there were no more symbols, no cryptic messages, only an image, an alien world, scorched and broken, its ruins stretching across the horizon. Othran, his face drained of color, whispered, "That's impossible." Daniel turned to him sharply. "You recognize it." Othran swallowed hard. That planet, those ruins, they belonged to the ancients. He shook his head, but it was lost. No records remain of its location. Vorik, the Threxian warlord, narrowed his reptilian eyes. "Then how are we seeing it now?" The Synthar eye twitched violently before its mechanical voice crackled to life. "Incoming transmission. Origin. Unknown." The voice returned, louder than before. "You have awakened what was never meant to rise again." The image on the screen shifted. Dark figures moved among the ruins. They were not ships nor soldiers. They were something else, shadows, humanoid yet shifting, as if they existed between dimensions. Then something closer appeared on the screen. A massive structure, larger than any space station, built with impossible angles, pulsing with a deep red glow. It looked ancient yet alive. Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. "What is that?" The voice answered. "The first city, the last prison. And now, the beginning." Suddenly, the Synthar AI units all went silent. Their artificial eyes flickered rapidly before dimming. One by one, they collapsed. Ships across the galaxy went dark. Fleets lost contact. Entire planetary defense systems failed. The void outside the council station shifted. And then, through the large observation windows, Daniel saw it. A ship. No, not a ship. A tomb, floating silently in the abyss. Unlike any vessel known in galactic history, its surface was covered in ancient carvings, glowing with the same red energy as the ruins. The council chamber trembled. The voice spoke one final time. "We have returned." Daniel clenched his fists. The galaxy was out of time. There was only one choice left: fight or be consumed. The war that the ancients died to prevent had begun again.